bonjour et bienvenue dans le repos. Je suis votre hôte Devin Decker et me joignez mon compagnon hôte, c'est Jean Serowick. C'est Jean?
Oh my God. Hi, Devin.
Hi, Sejan, how are you?
Are
That
you still in Rhode Island or are you reporting from France? What is going on?
Well, that was to introduce all of our inexplicable French listeners from the last week. Over 2,000 downloads in France. So thank you for listening to the Say Report or Dans le Repos. We appreciate you. Thank you. So I took the time to type into Google Translate what our usual opening is, which is hello and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Yeah, no, nothing better than just changing the entire formula for the show up once we have a bunch of listeners. I love that.
Well, I feel like we explained it so that if you were a listener from the beginning, you understand exactly why we're suddenly inexplicably French. We don't want to alienate anybody, but you know, I thought it was kind. I thought it was a nice thing to do. Of course, Jerry Lewis, I don't think he ever spoke in French, right?
No,
They
and he
just
was
loved him for
beloved
being
over
him.
there. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so this may have shot us in the foot.
They loved him for being him. Yeah, I honestly, to this day, could not explain to you what the appeal was there.
But I got to tell you, my mother, when I told her how many downloads we had in France, she's like, "Oh, you guys could be like the new Jerry Lewis." So we got that going for us, which is good. Cliving lady with the body and the eyes and the beret up so high.
Oh, man.
So anyway, welcome to the Say Report. It's a show about everything, and this falls under that heading, right? So that's the beauty. That's the beautiful thing about doing a show about everything. And as I've said, I'm Devin Decker. He's Sejan Sarowick. Sejan, I'd like to start this week off with a couple of pop quiz questions for you.
Oh,
These are not
okay.
for points. This is not sanctioned by official quizmaster Will Fournier. These are just things that have come to me over the past few days that I'd like to see if A, you know an answer to, and B, I think they can spiral off into conversations.
So instead of asking me questions that I have a chance of answering, you're just going to ask me some questions that I have no chance of answering. Okay,
I think you might be able to answer at least one of these. So I have two envelopes, one labeled A, one labeled B. Which one would you like to go first?
Oh, man. What? Oh, God. It's too early in the morning for choices to be made. B. Let's go with B.
Okay. So the envelope B, the question is, how many gallons of water does New York City use each day?
No, I mean, it has to be in the millions, right? Like, I would say 6 million gallons of water.
The proper answer to this question, and ladies and gentlemen, if you're sitting at home listening, I invite you to sit down because I don't want anyone fainting and getting hurt when I reveal this number. And I only say that because that is what my reaction was. They go through 1 billion gallons of water each day in New York City.
Damn, that's a number. Yeah. Awful lot of peeing in New York City.
It's just like such a staggering number. And this is inspired by, I started watching Bull, the 4th season of Bull, a show that after the 3rd season I said I'm done with this show. But, you know, the DVR still tapes it if I don't tell it not to. So then I have
watch it. Once it's taped, what are you going to do?
I have nothing else to do, so I guess I'll watch Bull. And in the second episode, the woman on trial has developed the freshwater honeycomb. Mm-hmm. And she is saying that within 90 days it will be ready for municipality use. And she demonstrates this, like Steve Jobs or any other tech disruptor, by demonstrating 500 gallons of water that is disgusting. Like, not even brown, like iridescent brown, which looks yellow and that. And it goes from one 500-gallon tank to another, and then it is clean. And that's 500 gallons of water. And they're like, that is, and then her R&D guy, who reminded me a lot of Alan Cumming from GoldenEye, which is going to be important for other stuff we're discussing this episode.
Okay.
He's like, Why did you tell them we'd be ready for municipal use in 90 days? You know we can only do 500 gallons at a time right now. And she's like, yeah, but I believe that we can solve it. So then he whistleblowed to the SEC, and then suddenly she's on trial for fraud. But then I'm thinking, well, if they can do 500 gallons at a time, you just build a bunch of those, and that should be able to fulfill the water needs of a municipal area, right? Like how often, and then I'm like, but how much water does New York City use in a day? And then 1 billion. And I'm like, well, first of all, fuck me for thinking that, this was viable in any way, shape, or form. But second, fuck humanity for just, raping the earth in the way that we do. That's so crazy. That's so much water.
Look, I am all for you. Look, you want to talk about man's impact on the world and how we are destroying it, I am right there with you. I don't think water consumption for me is high on the list of things that we're doing wrong.
That's true. I'm sure that of that 1 billion, there's I'm working on a cruise ship. You have gray water and you have black water, and gray water is able to be, recombinated into usable water again.
Right.
Which is real fun. If you ever go up to Vermont, the rest areas use gray water for their toilets. So you go into the bathroom and it's like, oh shoot, someone didn't flush. And then there's a plaque that's like, don't be grossed out by our toilet water.
Thanks, Vermont.
And I'm like, well, that's nice.
Man.
So those are state-run facilities. I don't know if it's everywhere, but I remember reading that sign and first of all, kind of cool. Second of all, I was grossed out by your toilet water.
Can I say that I'm just very excited that in the first 10 minutes of this episode, we have talked about both bull and bathroom use. This is really going in places today.
Oh, well, then I guess it's time for me to open up envelope number A.
Okay.
All
yep,
right.
Number A.
And the question is, Sejin, what is the name of the guy on the Pringles can?
He's sweet old Uncle Pophams, right?
That is a better name than what his actual name is. Also, it leads me to believe that he's somehow related to the Monopoly guy. Because,
right. Well, he's your other uncle. He's your cool uncle. Uncle Moneybags is the guy that's super conservative, but everybody puts up with because he gives really good presents at Christmas. But that's his whole shtick. Is they're just like, yeah, he wears a MAGA hat, but at the end of the day, he is going to buy us that $60 bottle of scotch. So let's do this.
Yeah, let's be kind. We'll play his little game. With sweet old Uncle Pophams, though, he's getting lost in traffic and that. No, so
kids played video games here.
Have you heard of this Pokemans? Yes,
Yeah.
Sweet old Uncle Pophams. You like Rick and Morty? I'm doing something with Rick and Morty.
Pickle Rick flavored Pophams.
Well, Pophams are a different chip. I just
true.
I just want to be
Pophams
honest.
were an actual thing.
Yeah, but no.
fucking
So
Pophams.
as far as I knew, he's just Mr. Pringles.
Mr. Pringle.
Mr.
Okay.
Pringles. But then I saw a friend of mine who I haven't seen in 10 years now. He asked on Twitter yesterday. It was my friend George. He asked on Twitter yesterday, is the name of the guy on the Pringles can just Pringles? and I dug that, but I'm like, no, it's Mr. Pringles. But then, I'm nothing if not thorough when answering a question that comes to me through Twitter. So I Googled it. What is the name of the Pringles man? And the internet told me that his name is Julius Pringles.
Julius Pringles.
Julius
Okay.
Pringles. Now, I found that everywhere, and then I'm like, well, I need more than just the internet telling me that. And the only reference source that I could find is Uncyclopedia, which for the uninitiated is for made up shit.
Yeah.
So
It's basically Wikipedia without the mask of respectability.
right. So Uncyclopedia is you can make up anything and you go on there. And I'm like, so that's where Julius Pringle's name comes from. But then I find a bunch of news articles that call him Julius Pringle, 15 mascots you didn't know had a proper name. And he was on that. So I'm like, so my question then became, and this was 2 questions in one envelope, I'm sorry. If something is made up and not true, but then it becomes what something is known as, like, throughout the land by a majority. Is that his name? Is he now officially Julius Pringles?
I mean, as a show that has wholeheartedly endorsed Frindle on many an occasion, I feel like we have to go with yes, it is now his name. Yeah.
If I were Johnny Carson in the big turban that he wore sometimes when he told the future, I would say I'd reveal a third envelope from within envelope A, and I would open it up, and written there would be exactly what you said. Because I'm like, Siege is going to bring up the fact that we talk about Frindle all the time and be like, so Julius Pringles has to be his name.
I mean, like, at this point, but at the end of the day, though, you're talking about like these like clickbaity type articles that are just like 15 mascots that you didn't know attended Mr. Peanut's funeral or something. Like, yeah. I don't think that those will count for me as reliable sources in any way. And if the only real like true source that you can find is Encyclopedia, I still don't necessarily stand by it. He will be Julius Pringles when I start hearing like other people referring to him as that around me.
That's true. And you know what the best part about this show is? We're putting that out there into the ether, and now we're going to see if people hear it and it comes back to us. Right now we are fishing for Julius.
And if our track record stands, he'll be dead by the end of the year. So
that's okay though, because then they'll introduce baby Uncle Pophams.
Baby Uncle Pophams.
And he'll just be taking off. He'll be pushing buttons, and I'll be taking off my shifter knob to hand to him. And this was a fun way to start this episode. Thank you, Siege. And how have you been, my friend?
Pretty good, man. I decided this week to rewatch a show that I don't think I talked about the first time I watched through it. So this week we will see the second season. Sorry, not this week. 1 week from Friday, I believe, if I'm doing my math right, we will be seeing the release of the next season of Paradise PD on Netflix. Do you even know what that is?
I know that it's a police show that's on Netflix.
Yeah.
It has an Archer aesthetic, which is
No.
how it does not have an
you could definitely maybe read that from things like commercials and stuff, but it is much more in like a Seth MacFarlane Family Guy vein.
Okay, but the aesthetic is the art style.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's not that. Okay.
The art style is like a direct. Oh no, you're thinking of Pacific.
I'm thinking of the other one, Pacific Heat. Yeah.
Yes.
So
that is
I'm wrong.
Definitely an Archer ripoff. That's
Yours is the one you're talking about is by the guys who did Brickleberry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they reference that a lot in that show. They joke about how Brickleberry failed, and it's so anyway. Yes. So Brickleberry is also, but it's another show that nobody watched. So what I will say is it is very much in the vein of like
a show that nobody watched that
had
4 seasons.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Comedy Central does that.
Not anymore. But continue. Sorry.
Tosh.O is still on the air,
and people watch that one though. We don't
know a single person that still watches Tosh.O.
You know where Tosh.O? You know why Tosh.O is still a show? Because they still show it in the afternoon.
Well, and it costs nothing. The only person they have to pay on that show is him.
Yes.
You know, I'm sure there are other people working for him and all that.
There would
but
have
I mean,
to be.
but like a show that is literally just a green screen and nothing else, and a bunch of YouTube videos that they don't have to pay to create. It is the cheapest show in the world. So I'm not too surprised it's still on the air, because it wouldn't take much of an audience to keep that show going. But I will say that show had a peak, and it was 6-7 years ago. that
show, my memories of Tosh.O, and we'll get back to Paradise PD, I apologize, is every time I would visit somebody's house, and I mean like, oh, I'm going to this person's house, and it was the afternoon. It was specifically like between 3 and 6 p.m.
Yeah, yep.
Tosh.O would be on the TV.
And there'd be like 4 episodes in a row of it.
Right. And so that like it all blended together and it was just background noise. But I'm like, this is the only time I ever see this show. And it doesn't seem like anybody's watching it. There's a small part of me, that I keep down buried deep, that is like has a conspiracy about whether or not that show has become sentient. And every time a television that is connected to the cable mainframe is just not doesn't have eyeballs on it, it knows that it can take over in order to strengthen its reign and continue its longevity.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an extremely cheap show to put together, and so in syndication, I'm sure that like it does its thing, and like it has kind of become like this weird like monster of its own, like with its own sentient like brain, right? Like because it's so simple, and I'm not. I'm not opposed to the concept of that show. I mean, you're talking about a guy that grew up on The Soup, like with Joel McHale. So like, I love that whole idea. It's just him. It's blatantly just him. I think is the worst part of that show, and I'm not gonna hide that. Like,
and his name is there in the title. Like, I
yeah,
remember when that show was new, and the gimmick of every season was he had a different outfit.
yes.
Season 4 is about cardigans.
And they would like retire the fucking like V-neck. They'd raise it to the rafters at the end of the season. Like, yeah, no, man. Like I said, that show had a peak about 7 years ago, and I definitely consumed it. I will not say that I always enjoyed that show, but you know, it follows in the same vein as like in America's Funniest Home Videos, right? Like it's a tried and true method of making a television show. I just don't know if it deserves to be in what must be its like 11th or 12th season, right?
I mean, it has to
Unless
be, right?
unless
It
he like
started when
unless
we
there
were
was like
in...
a break for
Yeah.
right, yeah. Unless there was like a break for a couple of years, which that's the other thing about a show like that on like Comedy Central is, for all I know, maybe they took like a 5-year hiatus and then they realized like, hey, we got a slot in our schedule and this was cheap to make. Like, come on back.
I feel like we've already devoted too much time to Tosh.O, but here's a promise from the Say Report. Next week's episode, I will have actual numbers on Tosh.O so we can put this to bed. But yeah, okay,
What I'm
so
trying to find, and I am not finding, is the MTV ripoff of Tosh.0 with Rob how do you say his last name? The skateboarder there, Brubeck.
ridiculousness.
Yeah, where it's just him and all of his friends doing exactly what Tosh does, but you know that dude pays to make his own shows because he's got so much friggin' money
I
from
mean,
like
we could also talk about the fact
endorsements.
that it's all based on VH1's best week ever, best decade ever.
Oh yeah, it's definitely
Like,
in that vein. Yep.
that's what started the whole, talking heads over existing content, and then Comedy Central's like, what if it's just one talking head?
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it comes from a tried and true like genre of television of the user generated content. You know, like that. Again, it costs nothing for them to produce because they don't have to be the ones to make any of the content. So it's it's a pretty solid business method. I'll leave it at that. So anyway, yeah. Next week we'll talk about Tosh.0. Hooray!
No. I'm going to tell you how many seasons there are. That's
Yeah.
pretty much. Don't get your hopes up. It's not going to be the Tosh.0 episode, but I'll have real numbers because I like real
Yeah, I like
numbers.
that. Let's start making more promises about what we won't talk about. We're better at keeping those kinds of promises.
Nice.
Um,
So Paradise
yeah,
PD
so
is getting a second season, which
Paradise
means I
PD
know
is
what I'm
getting a
doing this
second
week.
season. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what kind of legs this show has because so it came out kind of just before the big like culling last year of Netflix shows when Netflix had to come out and finally be like, not all of our shows are as successful as we maybe purport them to be. Like, you know, their whole big thing is that they hide numbers, right? And so a lot of things got canceled. Like one day at a time, I think is the big one that kind of really shook a lot of feathers when it got canceled last year. But that got picked up for a second season by for a fourth season by a different network and stuff. So that'll still live on as well. But this one weirdly like kind of survived that, and so you know, again, we don't have real numbers, but the implication is that it's a pretty popular enough show to have survived that nonsense, and in fact they announced in the middle of all of that they were actually getting renewed for a second season. So I'm very excited to see where it goes because for all intents and purposes the show itself is not one that I think, like, the joke is pretty well done for me. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to watch this new season, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the first season. I just don't see where they go with it, like, as for the humor. But also on top of that, the story that show told is actually like a season-long story, and they finished it. So I don't know what the story is next either. So, like, there's a couple of different things that make it somewhat intriguing, which is weird for a show that is in that vein of like, you know, the dick and fart humor of like a Family Guy. So there's this sense of, you know, we're trying to push your boundaries, but we're doing it because we want to push some political story or reason, right? And so for Paradise PD, the entire thing is obviously like this like look at police departments in this country right now and the ways that in which they handle all sorts of things, you know. And the show is not afraid to talk about real world shit, but also at the same time pokes fun at a lot of like tropes and stuff. So like there's straight up, and this is maybe a reference of things to come, but there's like Michael Winslow jokes in like episodes and things like that. It's like so I just this week I decided with the new season coming out and they did the final official announcement of the actual date. The Netflix did that thing where like they said for months a new season's coming, a new season's coming. By the way, it's coming next week. And it was like, oh shit, okay. So I went back and rewatched it, and I do have to say that there's a part of me that very much enjoys this show, and I'm very curious to see how anybody else reacts to it now. Because that's the other thing about these announcements for Netflix. Whenever they say there's a new season coming, I feel like very smartly they do this to get people to get back and rewatch the old show, which was not always the case with things like television and things like that, because you didn't always have the ability to go back and rewatch the old stuff. You kind of had to, they had to make these announcements with the hope of picking up new users without having people being able to go back and necessarily reference what was already seen. And in the streaming atmosphere, that's not necessarily the case, right? But I don't know anybody else besides Netflix who like hides the release date and then like, oh, by the way, this is coming out in a week, and here's the first season right here, front and center for you to watch. Go nuts, right? Like, I just don't see anybody else doing that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It was in my face, and I wanted to see it anyway. So now that's what I did with my week.
Well, that's funny that you should mention literally everything that you mentioned, because I too took a look down memory lane. And I revisited the entire Police Academy series.
Yeah, it was really weird because I was in the middle of doing my police comedy show, and you were like, "Guess what I'm doing this week?" I was like, "Oh no shit, okay."
I like that you kept it a secret. That makes me very happy. And literally, I don't know what started it is that like I need something to watch. And I'm like, oh, you know what I haven't watched in a while? Police Academy. That's a pretty fun movie.
You know what? Literally, no one has watched in a while. Police Academy.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
But I'm like, let's see if that's available anywhere. And I type Police Academy into Netflix, and then suddenly all 7 of them are there. Like, we fucking dare you.
Yeah,
to
it was a
eat
big
just
get, actually.
one.
Yeah, it was a big get for Netflix last year. They actually also nothing has come of it. So like there's like this is not like an announcement of something coming, but they also actually optioned like the concept of Police Academy for the idea of a possible either reboot or series. You know, like I said, they don't have any like actual plan with it. They just did that thing where they were like, we're gonna buy up the rights for this. So yeah. So very, very interested to hear about what they do with that, if they do anything.
Yeah, because I think it would weirdly work, but I feel like the torch has already been picked up by Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Fair enough. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Do you when did you first encounter Police Academy, like in your life?
So I watched the animated series.
Nice.
So I was 3 years old, and it was like that weird moment between Ghostbusters, like before the real Ghostbusters got huge. Police Academy had this series, and I loved that series. And as a result of that series, I wanted to be a police officer so badly. Like that was my plan at 3 was I'm gonna be like Mahoney.
Well, that series was no joke for the end of the 80s.
Yeah, like I wish I could find that somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, like we're talking about a 2-season 64 run show, right? Like
yeah. But like that was awesome.
So I actually didn't know about the cartoon show. I didn't know much about the Police Academy movies until like I was, I don't know, maybe like 10, right? Which was actually kind of the right time, I feel like, to get into that series. But like I was at like a family member's house, and they had a whole bunch of movies, and that was the place where I would go to watch like Steven Seagal films and stuff, right? And like, so we're not talking like high caliber film, but we're also, a pretty good repertoire for a 10-year-old boy to be building in terms of like the movie watching. And so like watched Police Academy and then like instantly like fell in love with the stupid humor and stuff in it. And so watched as much of it as I could. And it wasn't until years later when I found like a puzzle at a dollar store for like of the Police Academy cartoon show, and I was like, there's a cartoon show? And like at the time, the internet was the Wild West, and so instantly found like every episode of it and like consumed the hell out of it all through like high school, like would watch and rewatch it. I had a weird, like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, love of that series. Looking back on it now, there's a lot of inherent issues that I personally would have with that series, but at the time, like, it was hilarious shit, man. Like, it's the same time I got into like The Naked Gun and like Stripes and stuff too. So there was a lot of that like, military organization style spoof humor that I kind of dug.
Yeah, and that's it. But it was all the series for me, and I want to say it wasn't until high school. Now, like think about that. Think about a person who, for I'll say 16 years, my experience with Police Academy was the cartoon series and the entire collection of toys that came from it.
Nice.
And then it's high school. I don't know when or where, but Police Academy 4 Citizens on Patrol is on HBO. And nice. I'm like, I'll watch it, right? Like, I don't know. And as I'm watching it, it's pretty apparent that Citizens on Patrol is exactly what inspired the series. Because all of the officers who are present in COP are the ones that the series uses.
Yeah. Do you know the timeline on that? I can find it really quickly.
No, the timeline. Actually, the Police Academy, the series, does connect Citizens on Patrol to Mission Miami Beach.
Oh, damn. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So, Assignment Miami Beach. Apologies. Which is my favorite title in the series, because all of them are Police Academy, the number, and then colon, and then a subtitle. And Assignment Miami Beach is Police Academy 5, colon, assignment, colon, Miami Beach. I love when you have two colons in a title.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's putting out a lot of shit that way.
But yeah, so it specifically is designed to link those two worlds. Like, it fills in that whole area between them. So I watched Citizens on Patrol, and I'm like, oh my God, Sweet Chuck. And like, because Sweet Chuck is something that I thought I made up. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I'm excited. I watched that movie, and I'm like, wow, like I get it. I really understand how that influenced the show and why the show meant so much to me. And then I'm like, so I guess that's it for Police Academy, right? Like, this is where my journey is going to end with these characters. And then I'll say 2 years later, it was my freshman year of college, and I saw Police Academy 6, City Under Siege, which is awesome because, as IMDb says on literally every single Police Academy, has the same trivia word for word. There are two separate types of narrative structure for a Police Academy film. 1, 3, and 4 feature the cadets at the police academy, and the villain is not revealed until the third act. 2, 5, 6, and 7 have the villains interspersed throughout. This police... and like, that is trivia on every Police Academy movie.
That's insane. Somebody out there got that little tidbit and went to town on IMDb.
And was just like, I'm going to add it to all of them. Well, because it's an interesting thing, because really, like you said, it's spoofing the military complex. It's like that counterculture, us against authority. Like, that's what 1, 3, and 4 are. And I think that's what people think of when they think of Police Academy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 1 is the one that ends with martial law being instated, right? Am I misremembering that? Yeah, where they basically have to take over the streets.
Yeah, because what's his name? Fackler, the rabbi from Seinfeld, pushes over a pinball machine and it incites a riot in the streets.
Right. Yeah, man. That is distinctly what I think of, and I want to be clear that in my nostalgic memories of this series, I also, as I said, like looking back on it, recognize that there's a lot of questionable humor nowadays in that series, right? Am I wrong about that? You've watched it much more recently than I have. I literally have not watched it in like 10 years. So
the thing is that like they make jokes that
yep.
like with 2020 hindsight, theme of the year, maybe you would think negatively about the joke itself. Like maybe it's not a positive joke. It's not lifting anybody up. And you can definitely view it that way. But the joke I think you're referring to, the one that leaps to mind when you ask me that question, is the Blue Oyster Bar.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Which is the gay club that is featured throughout Police Academy 1 through 4 as like a place where usually. So the really good thing about Police Academy is there are always like two closed-minded assholes who are like the stereotypical way that, you know, I'd say most of society views police officers.
Right.
And they're the ones who wind up in the Blue Oyster Club or Blue Oyster Bar. It's one of those. I think it's Blue Oyster Bar. And they wind up in there, and suddenly they're forced to like react and interact with this side of society, like homosexual society in the 80s, that they are like wholly against.
Yeah.
But they're not like offensive to the guys. They allow them to dance. They kind of just like, all right, we're just going to do whatever we can to get out of this situation alive. And it's weird because like, yes, gay panic is a huge fucking problem with a lot of comedy from the 80s through to the 2000s and beyond. But you look at those scenes and it's like, this could be so much worse. Like,
yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we're talking about a series of movies coming out alongside Revenge of the Nerds, which is at this point universally recognized as being problematic on many levels. And you don't hear that about something like Police Academy. And I wonder how much of that is because Police Academy, for all intents and purposes, was never like the darling of comedy, you know? And I think that a lot of that comes from the fact that they were willing to play to the common denominator in a way, like two children and two families in a way that other comedy series of that time refused to, you know? Like, but I don't know, like, I do think that it's interesting to look at them as an artifact of humor based on the idea of, I'm trying to think of the most politically correct way of saying this, but essentially like making fun of police and having it being a spoof of police while at the same time being very supportive of what the police represent. Like, because at the end of the day, every one of those movies, it's not about like, look at these stupid police officers. They actually end up being pretty good police officers, which makes your reference to Brooklyn Nine-Nine earlier a very perfect example. Is it's not that they're bad at their jobs as police officers. They're just goofy people. So like they have character quirks that are more about them being humans in the world than it is about them being police officers, right? And it's the same for something like a Paradise PD, and it humanizes the police in a way that I think a lot of people in this country very much enjoy. I think that's the way that I'm going to put that. I think that there is a faction of people that enjoy this kind of storytelling, this genre of comedy, because it puts people that, you know, for all intents and purposes, are seen as the villain in a lot of ways, puts them in the hero seat and allows them to be actual, just funny people, as opposed to these like Keystone Cops that we see in other forms of cop comedy, I guess is the best genre name for it.
Yeah, they actually really get to have their cake and eat it too, because you do still have those slapsticky Keystone Cop moments
with the two idiots, mostly,
with the guys who are like. Yeah, exactly. You have it with Harris, you have it with Mauser, you have it with Proctor. All these guys who like, this is the person who is the asshole, and thus we see that they're an idiot, and the joke is on them a lot of the time. So you get to have those moments, but then you also get to have these moments where, like, you know, Mahoney only goes to Police Academy because, you know, he disturbs the peace. He parks. He's like told to park a car in a park in a full parking lot. So he puts the car up on two wheels and slots it between two cars. And like he goes and they arrest him for that. And then the cops like, you know, you're in here all the time for like troublemaker things. I know you're not a bad dude. I'm sending you to Police Academy.
Yeah. It becomes the military school like storyline of we're sending you to straighten you out. We're sending you to military school. Yeah.
Yeah. So it works weirdly in that way, and I think what I really like about these films is it's a bunch of people from different backgrounds coming together to form this family, and that's wonderful. But you know, using the word family and the exhaustive number of sequels, it was kind of hard not to watch Police Academy and think that a film series released in 2001 picked up where they left off.
Oh. And
I feel like Police Academy was the Fast and Furious franchise of the 80s.
Okay. And here we go. This is when the thesis drives off a cliff for me. But apparently it's going to hook shot itself back up, so I think we're good.
Yes, that's perfect. You've seen a Fast and Furious film, obviously. And really what it is just you have these films. Like Police Academy would not work in 2020. And that's just the fact of the matter. We talk about the fact that, you know, police are viewed as the villain by a large section of society, and that's not wrong. Especially when you consider a lot of the things we hear about, you know, police in the media every day.
Well, let's not beat around it.
Yeah, I know.
Things that police officers actually do, like because of certain actions of certain police officers, they are very much the villains right now in a lot of stories.
Yes, and that's why, like, I'm watching this show Tommy on CBS. It's got 3 episodes so far, and as much as I want to root for Tommy as like the new chief of police in LA, and they're like, I have all these things that I want to do. It's difficult because you know that
Falco?
Well, yeah, it is Edie Falco. It's interesting. I don't think it's going to last more than 1 season. Is my honest assessment of the show.
I love that Edie Falco though.
Oh yeah, she's great. But it's one of those things where like you know that just because she's the chief, that doesn't mean that there aren't still bad eggs.
Right. Okay.
And that's really, there are bad apples, and it spoils the whole bunch, right? Like, not every cop is shooting an unarmed person, but the ones that do, they color the perception of the entire institution.
Right.
And you know, kind of for good reason, because they're supposed to protect and serve, not, you know, play judge, jury, and executioner.
Right.
Out there.
Yeah. Right.
But yes, so I mean, even Steve Guttenberg has gone on record saying that you could never do a Police Academy film in the current climate. So you look at that, and you look at something like Mission to Moscow, which is terrible, right? I think we can both agree that it's terrible, even though I'm fairly certain it is the base for GoldenEye, but we'll get to that in discussion points later. So you have to look at, how do you take something like the Police Academy thing where you're like humanizing these things, and Fast and Furious really kind of slots into that, because Brian is a police officer and he joins this gang of thieves, right? Dom's gang and family, and he realizes that like these guys really aren't bad. So I'm going to give up being a police officer, and I'm going to be a vigilante and fight with them. And that's a theme going through the whole series. The Rock's character, Hobbs, he was also a police officer who now joined in with the Fast and Furious crew. I don't think they have a name, which is like the only issue. Like family. The Fast and Furiousers.
The family, the family. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, that's true. I'm sure some fan out there has come up with a term that we should know. We got
I
to look into that.
Dom's crew. They joined Dom's crew, and you see like a lot of that. Like Shaw eventually became someone who was disillusioned with like MI6 and the way that they were treating things. So you see this like way of like these are people who are doing the right thing because they tried to do the right thing in a broken system and had to join the Fast and Furious thing. Now, also, we see a major shift through the 90s from comedy being the like big money maker to action being the big money maker. So, to go from the Police Academy films into the Fast and Furious films, and these people are, you know, driving fast cars and doing all that, there's still humor there, right? All you need to do is look at Therese Gibson's Roman character to see the humor, but it's there, and it is this family, and it's just these people, there's like street racers, and we humanize them and make them real people, plus they're also kind of fucking superheroes.
Right.
So
Yeah. It's two different mentalities in terms of like, in one of them, it's the idea of supporting supporting the system versus breaking the system, right? Like, and I think at some point, I think the 90s can be blamed for this, is that it became cooler, it became more acceptable for to have the hero cop realize that the system's broken and to then leave it and try and take it down from the outside. Whereas, like, I think a lot of the humor in things like a Police Academy or even Brooklyn or Paradise PD, like the joke is like the system is clearly broken, but here are the good people inside trying to fix it, right? And so like I think that's where that kind of that audience base that I'm so interested in like seeing whether or not they still exist, right? Is because we do have a lot of people out there that still want to support people in uniform, and you know it's an interesting place to be as, like, you know, for all intents and purposes, like a liberal consumer, right? And the way that, like, I take in comedy, you know, I will gladly sit down and watch 10 episodes of Family Guy in a row without even thinking about it. But like, but Paradise PD, as stupid as it is, and it is a very dumb show, it still is actually like forcing me into this weird, uncomfortable position that I am thinking about the whole time, right? And then like Police Academy, like, again, I won't stand here and talk about it being like a pantheon of like American cinema that like we should all aspire to make film franchises in this vein. No, but at the same time, I don't think they should go anywhere yet. I think they are something still worth talking about.
right. Just to wrap up my whole Fast and Furious picked up where Police Academy left off. The best description I ever heard of the Police Academy films is that they're candy bars. It's just something that you eat to enjoy. It's
Right.
not for sustenance. It's not meant to fill you. It's meant to be entertainment. And
Yep.
that is the best way to think of the Fast and Furious films. But both of these things being candy bars, and I guess I'm going to go into my theory of candy evolution here as well, because I'm a big fan of that. They have continuity that is better than like any other film series that I can see out there. And that is truly what blows my mind. Like, just as you can see how we went from a Three Musketeers bar to a Milky Way by adding caramel to a Snickers by adding nuts to the caramel and nougat that was already there, and then the different permutations, types of nuts or types of, you know, third filling thing to get the Snickers branching tree, be it crisps or peanut butter or almonds.
I mean, for a series that they never like planned on making 7 movies, right? Like that was I cannot imagine when they were penning Police Academy that they were thinking, man, I can't wait till we get to go to Assignment Miami Beach.
So Maslansky, the guy behind the films, said that he always envisioned it to be a 10-movie story. That has to be a fucking lie. That has to be a lie from like the highest tower, because I can't. This high tower, hilarious. I'm hilarious. I miss Bubba Smith. R.I.P. Bubba Smith.
Oh man.
But because that first movie happens and it exists and it is by all intent and purposes, for an 80s movie, perfect. If I had to point to perfection in the 80s, Police Academy would probably be on my list in a lot of ways. And I think the major reason why it would be on that list is every single sequel to Police Academy is just Police Academy again with a different plot outline. Like and that's where I'm talking about continuity, is they're like, oh, so we have the scene in the Blue Oyster Club. We have the scene where someone eats food and sprays sauce onto another person. We have the scene where, you know, Bubba Smith intimidates somebody. We have the scene where Callahan, everybody's intimidated by her, but then they realize, oh, she's a sexy lady and everybody wants to get involved. Like, it's one of those, it's just like, these are the jokes. It's sort of like the Stooges, where, like, you know, Moe's always going to hit Curly.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are the bits that we know work. We just need to give it a different path to getting there. And also, so I didn't see Police Academy until 2015. It was a part of my 365 movies. That's why I watched Police Academy for the first time.
Interesting.
And having never seen 2 or 3, my experience with Police Academy being 1, 4, and 6, I thought that G.W. Bailey was in every movie.
Oh.
So then to watch 2 and 3 and to see that he is not there, that he is replaced by the Mauser character, really surprised me. But what works about these films, what works about Police Academy, even in 2020, you know, because there's always going to be language that's negative in today's eyes in a movie from the 80s, right? People are going to use the word fag and think that it's fine. Your hero's going to use that word, and you're going to be like, ooh, that hits wrong now. Yeah. Especially when you consider that in Police Academy, Mahoney is the only person who uses that word. Even the 2 guys who wind up at the Blue Oyster Club don't use that word.
Yeah.
So it's strange.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you're always going to have that issue. But what I will celebrate about these is this level of continuity where any character that you saw at any time in these movies is free range to come back. And really, that's why Police Academy 3, Back in Training, when the guy who was the leader of the riot from the first movie and the prostitute that they hire come back, it's like there's a real level of respect for what you guys are doing here. Even though you're just making mindless fucking entertainment, you're putting in a care that surprises me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think that's what rings true for me when I watch something like Paradise PD, is like I can totally recognize some of the problematic attitudes that it has. I can definitely see how the humor is tropey and rote in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, there is a thought behind it that is one worth exploring, right? And so, you know, you ride that line of, like, you know, at some point you have to pull the plug and say, I'm not going to support this thing no matter what its message is trying to be, because it's just failing miserably at it. But interestingly enough, for me, something like a Police Academy toes that line okay. And so, you know, and this is coming off the heels of us doing a really big retrospective a couple of weeks ago on Ace Ventura, and coming to the realization, or maybe something we've known all along, that it's just not, it can't do that, right? Like, no matter how it moved along the idea of comedy in history, it has completely lost all value to me because of the issues that it has in its humor and its what's the word I'm looking for? It's victimization of certain characters, right? But I don't feel that way about Police Academy yet, you know?
Right. And that's really, that's a good thing of doing it, because even though both of us admitted that Ace Ventura is a good mystery, there's so much extraneous bullshit that's like, I'm probably never going to watch Ace Ventura again.
Yep.
Like, it's like, if I do, it's going to be for the exact reason that I watched it this time, to see, is there value in this? Is there something still worth discussing about this film? And even though I can hold my hand up and swear on like, if I were on a witness stand in a court of law, and I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I would have to say that it's a good mystery. That doesn't change the fact that I would never watch it again.
Yeah.
But Police Academy, even though there are those moments that's like, they're so small that it doesn't deter from me going back. I would watch them again right now. Because there's a fun to it. I think about Rene Auberjonois saying, another RIP, that the only reason he did Police Academy 5 is because he would never get to play that character. And he's so good in Assignment Miami Beach. He is obviously having the time of his life.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. But Mission to Moscow, I know that you hate it. I know that you're not a fan of it. And there's a lot of reason why. And it's because it's not as well made as the other ones. And a lot of that is the fact that they were filming in, the USSR and Russia while there were riots and political upheaval going on. So the production of that film was fraught with issues. And you see them on the screen. That being said, the idea of developing a video game to break down every single firewall in the world and give Konami, whose name is supposedly inspired by Konami, which that's my favorite thing I read about the movie, really felt a lot like GoldenEye when you consider you have the one guy who can do it, Alan Cumming, or whatever the guy is in Mission to Moscow.
The dude with the pen.
The dude with the pen, who he is the key to everything about this story. And, the intrigue and the bad guy and all this. And I'm like, I could see it, especially when you consider that GoldenEye is the first one to be an original story to borrow almost nothing from the Ian Fleming novels.
Yeah.
And I could almost see the people hey, did you read the script for Police Academy 7? Oh, yeah, it's garbage. What if we took that exact story and made a James Bond movie?
That's upsetting to me on so many levels. I love GoldenEye.
I love GoldenEye too, don't get me wrong. GoldenEye rejuvenated a franchise that was on its last legs.
That moment at the end when Alan Cumming stands up and he's just like, I lived, and then the tanks explode behind him is when I was a kid, was both terrifying and hilarious in a way that I had never experienced before. It's that image still haunts me.
Yeah, no, it should. It should. But come on, also, Xenia Onatopp. You could be Jean Grey all you want 6 years later. It doesn't change the fact that Famke Jensen, you were introduced to the world as a woman who murdered you by crushing your insides during sexual intercourse.
Yeah, she could crush you with her thighs. Yeah.
Xenia Onatopp.
Yeah.
That's it's come on. Let's just admit the longest running franchise in the world is James Bond, right? I don't think anything has more than 25 films. Maybe Hopalong Cassidy, because that guy was farting out movies.
But in terms of time span, for sure, James Bond definitely takes the cake. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's not hard to think of it in terms of there was a Police Academy movie every year from 1984 to 1989. And then it takes a 6-year hiatus and comes back in 94. And then Ron Perlman takes responsibility for killing the franchise. We haven't had to deal with one for 20 years. You're welcome.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, Police Academy weirdly endorsed by the Say Report.
Yeah, I just, it's out there on Netflix. So if you're looking for something, give it a try. And if you have issues with it, get to us, because I'd love to hear about them, and I'd love to discuss them here with Sejin about the things that maybe are victimization or the same reasons why we decry Ace Ventura that may exist in the Police Academy films. I'd love to hear. So get us on Twitter at The Say Report. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and if there's...
Oh, I'm not ready to wrap up yet. Don't give your Twitter name. I have other things.
No, I mean, if there is anything in the Police Academy movies, like it's also like I said, I'm not married to them, so like I want to know like what about these things I should really be looking out for. It's the same with Paradise PD. Like again, I'm very curious to see how it holds up with more and more seasons because Netflix's whole bag is let's push this show on you, but it's not the kind of show that I feel like is really for everybody. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I'll have more thoughts on Paradise PD next week. Because, I was looking for something to watch. Because what do you watch after Police Academy? There are no other kingdoms to conquer.
There's an entire episode of Paradise PD that is based on a Police Academy spoof. So
Perfect.
There you go, Deb.
So I'm excited for this. So do you have anything else that you want to talk about? Because I wanted to close the book on another Say Report chapter before we finished this episode. So
rewatched The Hack this week, or the Great Hack. I forget the full name of it. But it's the one that the documentary all about Cambridge Analytica. Do you know anything about it?
I'm familiar with it. I've never seen it.
It's pretty wild. You should definitely check it out. The coolest thing about it is that they filmed the entire thing and brought it to Sundance like 2 years ago, I think, if I'm doing the math right on that. And then showed the movie, got critical acclaim, people loved it. But right after Sundance, there was this huge break in the Cambridge Analytica case where this very important figure in the whole thing, Brittany Kaiser, finally came out of hiding and basically spoke to like the British government and the American government about everything that had happened. So they basically decided to just go back and completely refilm the documentary. So there's maybe 40 minutes of it that's the original one, but then there's like an hour and 20 minutes of it that is not the original cut of that movie. It's a completely different story because this woman came out. And so the version that's available out there on Netflix is the full version with this woman, with Brittany Kaiser, like, and you watch it, and I didn't know this the first time. I didn't know about the edit and all this stuff the first time. So you watch it, and she is like the driving story of that documentary. To find out that they didn't even know she existed the first time around is insane. The core of the original documentary is about David Carroll, I believe is his last name, the guy that sued Cambridge Analytica and Facebook in order to get his information, like to find out what they knew on him, which you can't do in the United States, which was his whole problem, but you can do in the UK, and Cambridge Analytica is a UK-based company. So he is able to go to the UK to sue them for his information, and and that on its own is a phenomenal story and still present in the documentary. It's just that after everything that happened where they got all of this new information about what Cambridge Analytica is and how they were connected to like the Trump campaign and Brexit and all this stuff, it just became this whole bigger story, and they basically refilmed this whole documentary. And it's a phenomenal story of filmmaking, as well as a phenomenal story of like what the hell happened in 2016 to the world. So I just want to say that it's the second time that I have actually watched it, and it is mind-blowing. It edges really close to becoming like a conspiracy like style like YouTube video in a few moments, but the truth is like they can back up everything that they're saying. So that's what makes it almost scarier. It's like you're listening to it, and if I had just walked in the room, I'd be like, well, this is ridiculous and over the top. But after watching an hour of them putting evidence in front of you and then saying this means this, and you're just like, oh like I don't know.
I think that's why I don't watch documentaries.
Yeah.
Is because they all feel like just conspiracy videos. And that might come
Planet
from
Earth
the fact...
especially.
Oh, yeah. I don't believe in this planet Earth. No.
David Attenborough, you nut.
It comes from the fact that a lot of the documentaries I was watching in like my late 20s were just conspiracy documentaries.
Oh yeah.
So like how Paul is dead and was replaced. I watched a whole documentary about that, and I'm just like, this is so believable. They have made such a good argument for this thing that obviously couldn't have ever happened. Like, there's no way this is real.
Yeah, like the whole jet fuel can't melt steel beams, like zeitgeist documentaries that are on YouTube that came out after like 9/11 and all that.
Yeah.
As I was at URI, I was in a poli-sci class where they had us watch like one of the full-length ones on YouTube in class and then like go home and write about it. They never framed it for us as this is a conspiracy video and a lot of the information that they're providing is assumption or straight up just baseless. And like I didn't know that at the time, and there was a good like 5 or 6 year period where there was a bunch of shit in my head that I was just like, but we know this, this, and this, right? And it wasn't until like I said, like 6 or 7 years later when I decided to actually just look into stuff on my own, and I realized I was like, oh, this video is just a bunch of bullshit. Like basically about how like the U.S. dollar could be manipulated if you did A, B, and C. One of those things being knock down the World Trade Center, and how that would do this. But all of that being supported by the government because they wanted to achieve that is like I honestly believe some of that shit because nobody ever framed it for me as like you shouldn't trust what this video is telling you, and that like.
Right, and that's the issue, is that,
Yeah.
like, so, like, when you watch a documentary like that, something that is wholly false, but they make a compelling argument,
Right.
it sort of colors how you watch every documentary. Like you're saying, like, the Cambridge Analytica hack, right? Completely real, something that happened, but you still watch it and think this feels conspiracy theory-ish. That's because one of the formulative documentaries that you watched, Siegen,
Yeah.
was a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the documentary is also very much styled as like a conspiracy mystery because it is. I mean, it was for the people involved. You know, the more that they heard about it, they're at some point where they were like, "How deep does this go?" And when the answer is the president of the United States, like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's nuts. It's always nuts, and I dig it on a level, but I'm also terrified of it on another.
Yeah, yeah. So just check
Okay.
that out.
All right. So now it's time to close a book in the chapter of the Say Report, and that book is called Google Stadia. Because as of the release of this episode, I am no longer a subscriber.
Yeah,
And I got Google
that
Stadia.
is honestly surprising, Dev. I am surprised.
Well, Siegen, I don't use it. So I don't see the point in spending $10 a month
Oh yeah, no,
to have access to 8 games. Because I'm not going to spend money to buy a game on Google Stadia when, first of all, they haven't released the free version yet. You have to still be a pro member to use Google Stadia. So if I had any games that I had purchased in this 3-month period, I would lose access to when I stop paying my subscription cost.
Okay,
That's an issue. And it's an issue that a lot of people who use Stadia have because when you bought the Founders Pack, which I did, you were told you were getting a copy of Destiny 2. But really, you're getting a copy of Destiny 2 as long as you're a subscriber to their Pro system.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, it's that idea that you don't buy software, you just lease
rent it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if I had spent like $60 to buy Red Dead Redemption 2 on Stadia, I would lose access to it because they have made no effort to create the free version of this app that they were trumpeting about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
That this is also going to have access for people who just want to buy the games and not pay for the subscription program. So that's like the one. The second thing is I never use it. I've owned it for 3 months and I've only been using it for the last 2 weeks. And that's because I knew my time with it was coming to an end, but they gave out the game Guilt for free to pro members this February. And it's really the only Stadia exclusive game. You can't play it anywhere else.
Well, and aren't there? And you just said there's only pro members, right?
Yeah.
So like nobody bought that game. Everybody was just given a free copy of it.
Everybody bought that game. And then to like entice people to stay on, entice the people who didn't buy it, they gave it for free at the end.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
did not
upsetting.
buy that game because again, I didn't spend any money on anything but the set. I wanted the set and I got an extra controller so I could test how well you could do 2-player stuff.
Is there anything to salvage there? Like, does the controller work on other
That's
things?
why I'm okay. That's why I was okay buying the second controller. Because they said from the beginning, we want to make the Stadia controller the most comfortable controller ever.
Mm-hmm.
And they succeeded there.
And you can use it.
And I can use it. So I can't. The biggest issue that I have with the Stadia controller, and this is actually reason 3 why I'm canceling it, is It is a computer itself. It has a hard drive. It has a CPU in there that uses it. And because of that, it is told that it cannot be used for Bluetooth right now. It has Bluetooth in there. It has all of the components that you could use it as a Bluetooth controller. But currently, on the CPU, the line of code activating that is off.
So they have it disabled. It's built into the system, but they have it completely.
But they have it disabled on a firmware level.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous. But if you plug it in with a USB-C cable, it is detected just like any other input device for a computer, and it can be used that way.
Okay.
So I have these beautiful controllers that I can use, and I will use, because they are... Imagine if it's the form factor of a Xbox controller, right? But it has the D-pad placement of a PlayStation 4 controller.
Beautiful, gorgeous, all I've ever wanted.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I want, and that's exactly what it is. So you did it right. They did that right. But yeah, so I've been playing through Guilt, and I have to say, as a system seller, Guilt is a great game. The problem is they haven't got any other system sellers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever will.
Yeah, I wonder if you could really take a look at the timeline for, say, a Nintendo, who kind of infamously kind of slowly drips out their system-defining games as well. And I wonder if they're doing any better or worse than that, and if we give maybe more leeway to, the big three than we would ever give to Google coming into this. But they had to know that, right? That they I can't believe they didn't front load the release of this thing with a good at least 2 or 3 games that were going to define the point of it, right? It's so disappointing.
Yeah, because here it works amazing. I cannot fault the infrastructure of Stadia. It does not feel... Today was the first day that I had any issues connection-wise. Because I was playing the game and, my inputs became jittery. And, it was my fault because I had to reset my router. It was an internet issue at my level. I was not connecting well. So it's so obviously that can happen. If you don't have a good internet connection, this thing's going to be useless to you. Right. I get that. But, based on my usual internet that I have, I was able to play this game as if it were right on a console. And to think that all it is a Chromecast plugged into a monitor, that's super cool to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so it's this. So Guilt is good if you ever want to play the game. Hopefully, I don't know, I don't think we'll ever drop anywhere else, so I guess I'll recommend to play Rhyme. Because it's by Tequila Works. It's the same people. Okay. Plus, Dale loves Rhyme. She doesn't shut up about Rhyme. So I have to imagine it's... game. Okay.
She's not wrong.
Yeah. So it's Guilt is baby's first Resident Evil in so many ways. Even the last thing I did before I recorded was collect a canary-shaped key to open a door.
Nice. Very,
and
very
I'm just
nice.
oh, okay. So that's what this game is. You are Resident Evil for babies, and I'm fine with that. Because I like Resident Evil, but my big issue with Resident Evil is getting into it. So if you give it a game where, resources are plentiful and that, you can learn how to play that style of game and maybe get into it. And it's a great... I screamed out loud yesterday. I was so scared by something that happened in the game yesterday.
That is awesome.
So they did that well. It's just if they were doing more Stadia exclusive games, maybe I could justify the $10 a month. But the fact that it's never my first choice when it's time to play a game, and the lack of support for it, I think I'm done with Stadia right now. And in a lot of ways, I'm afraid that Google is also done with Stadia.
Yeah, I think that it's going to become one of those things where they phase out the Stadia itself, but I bet that we see this technology that they're using make it out into the world. They'll end up licensing this type of streaming technology out to somebody else.
I mean,
and
NVIDIA just released GeForce Now
a
week ago, and it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, so like we'll see this technology, and in a lot of ways, like this is always Google's game. Is like, look, we're gonna try this thing, and if it falls apart, we'll make what money we can off of it. And so it is disappointing because the concept is so cool, and I'm glad to hear that infrastructure wise, that's not the reason you're giving up. I know for a lot of people that's not the case. I know that a lot of people are giving up, and for a lot of them it is because like things like their internet. I don't know if I could ever have it in this house. Like we just don't have good internet in Utah. Like there are areas where we can get some pretty decent fiber, but fiber optic, but like not everywhere. And like just yesterday, we were sitting around listening to Spotify, which is nothing in terms of streaming. It takes no real strength to stream, and having issues with it. It kept being jittery, as like you mentioned, or like bouncing between songs or playing the wrong thing. And we found out that all we had to do was do a reset on our internet, but like that happens once every week for us, and I don't think I could put up with that from a gaming system.
Yeah, that's true. This is the first time I've had to reset my router this year. And it's, we've been doing a lot of stuff, different things in the house, and I get it. I understood that, like, okay, we scared you, and I'm sorry, router. Let us reset you and give you a bagel. And now he's working fine. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just disappointing. But I think the fact that they had this built-in like 3 months beta, for lack of a better term, and I don't think a lot of people are going to be continuing it even at just $10, that this is going to be the death knell for Stadia. And I'm certainly not the first person to say it, but I am someone who invested to give it a shot, who is a little disappointed in the fact that it's probably going to go away. And that's that.
Oh man.
So yeah, so this is the Say Report. If you like what you hear, remember that we have a very special episode coming out this Thursday. So go look at us. That's only releases anywhere that you can download us. So look on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. It does not go up on YouTube. So if you're someone who watches us on YouTube, make sure that you go to one of those platforms in order to hear our very special episode. And that's going to be on Nurse Betty, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems appropriate to talk about Neil LaBute in the same month where we took a deep dive into High Fidelity.
Yeah, well, and we made this plan before the Oscars this year, but it'll also be really cool to talk about Renee Zellweger after her winning her Oscar this year.
Yeah. So look forward to that. If you have anything to say to me about anything that we talked about this week, maybe you want to plea that I should stay on Stadia, you can find me on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
And if there's anything else on Netflix that you want to recommend in the questionable comedy category, hit me up at Siege versus the World.
So until next time, Will, please take us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.